It was a riot. Really, it was a riot on the campus of Bucknell University, and it was all Jimmy Carter's fault. Here's what happened. I was the vice president for student life at Bucknell, and a big evening had come up because former President Jimmy Carter was scheduled to speak up in the main auditorium on campus. Now, the chief of police in Lewisburg was not very fond of our students, and I got a phone call talking about the importance of having them behave properly. Well, did the best we could. Now, I wasn't able to go up that night to hear the speech because I had a meeting with students. So I was back in my apartment, relaxing with a glass of wine, when I got a phone call from the director of campus security. And he said, "It's a riot. You've got to come and stop it. Come at once." And he told me that just 2 blocks from my house, the street was filled with students and police officers. Now, I rushed down and could not imagine the sight that I saw. It was like a horror movie. On one side were hundreds of students in Halloween costumes, because this was the night before Halloween. Some of the students were up in the trees. And on the other side, behind a stone wall, were police officers with guard dogs and weapons. There was a fire truck and buses filled with campus officers. And in the middle of the street was a squad car with the flashing light. And as I got nearer and looked inside, there was a huge costumed lizard with handcuffs on his hands. What in the world brought this about? And all around me, the students were shouting, "Release the lizard, free speech. Release the lizard, free speech." As I got nearer to the deputy chief, who looked very frustrated by all this, several students in costume came forward. One was an Arab sheik, another was Cinderella, and then there was someone dressed as a human shower curtain with a rod up his back and a curtain around his head. "Now, what happened?" I said. Well, the deputy explained that he'd had a call that there were wild student parties in off-campus housing. The word, since there were no parties taking place on campus, was free beer, and lots of students decided to go. Now, the lizard was just there observing it when the deputy came in trying to squell the party. The lizard took his picture with camera. The deputy was incensed, picked up the camera, threw it on the ground, broke it, and arrested the lizard for disturbing the peace. Now, as he took him out to the squad car, immediately the students started shouting, "Wait, he's entitled to take a photograph if he wants to. We've got free speech in this country." But the deputy paid no attention and put the lizard into the car. So there we were, students shouting, "Release the lizard, free speech." And the police officers and the SWAT team just looking for a reason to get involved. What was I supposed to do? This wasn't part of my job description. Well, we formed a negotiating committee, the 5 of us, the deputy, the Arab sheik, Cinderella, and the shower curtain, and myself. And we began to talk about how nice it would have been if there were parties on campus. Students wanted to celebrate. Now, we'd had a lot of problems with underage drinking, and the trustees had been leaning on me about not having fraternity parties with underage drinking. But we began to talk. I said I'd see what I could do to try to create a better atmosphere next year. And so the deputy opened the car, and out came the lizard, and he took off the handcuffs, and all the students cheered and cheered. Now, I led a group of students up the hill to the main quadrangle, where we had a conversation about the need for more funding for student activities so there could be a Halloween Eve bash next year. And I went home relieved, thinking perhaps I had more negotiating powers than I knew, when I heard one student say to another, free beer behind the library. That's what took them up the hill. The next morning in the newspaper, former President Carter was interviewed about the situation, and he congratulated the students for standing up for their rights of free speech. I told you, it was all Jimmy Carter's fault.